I'm glad your company's doing well. By the way, I got to ask you, who is doing your accounting work and who is providing you with higher level financial advice? Oh, that's an easy one. I got a friend who's doing some bookkeeping for other companies, and so now she's doing bookkeeping for mine as well. Well, I'm glad you got your day-to-day covered. But what about your tax planning or your budgeting or financial analysis? I have my bookkeeper help me when she can. It might not be ideal, but I can't afford to hire a full-time CFO for as little as I would need that person. When you need to drive in a nail, do you use the butt end of a screwdriver? No, that would be silly. When you need to tighten in a screw, do you hit it with a hammer? Again, no. Where are you going with this? Well, by the same token, you need to have the right person for the right job. There are some things better suited for a bookkeeper, and there are other things that are better suited for a controller, a CFO, or other financial expert. If you cannot afford to hire a full-time CFO, or if you don't have a need for a full-time CFO, there are other options, such as I would suggest that you contact a local CPA firm in your area, or look for a fractional CFO provider that could help you. That sounds great. When can you start? Many people really do not understand the difference between a CFO, controller, or a bookkeeper. They think they're just different names for the same thing, and nothing could be further from the truth. They have different skill sets, what they do is different, what they focus on is different, and of course, how much you have to pay them is different. Now let's look into some of the details. This list here represents some of the major functions that a bookkeeper would be expected to do. Accounts payable, which includes posting invoices from vendors, paying the invoices when they're due. Accounts receivable functions, if you're invoicing customers, they'll be responsible for mailing out the invoices and also recording cash as it comes in. Often they'll be responsible for payroll, making sure that all the data is correct and actually running the process. Each month, the bank sends its statement, and the bookkeeper can prepare a bank reconciliation. And for smaller companies, the bookkeeper can also work on simple tax returns, like for a sole proprietorship. They can also do sales and use tax returns as well. The bookkeeper also can work on general ledger reconciliations, and they can prepare a rough draft of what your financial statements look like. When you look at some of the job postings, this list here shows what skills or traits are needed. For a bookkeeper, a 4-year degree is not usually required, and often a 2-year degree is not a must. It's desirable, but it's not required. Experience is very helpful. Knowledge of QuickBooks or some other accounting software is necessary. You need to be fast, accurate, trustworthy. Their focus is on doing the day-to-day transactions, whether it's accounts payable, receivable, weekly or biweekly payrolls, and so forth. I did a quick search online to see, how much are bookkeepers making in my area? And this is what I saw. I found 8 open bookkeeper positions advertised, and these were the rates that they were going for. You can see there is a little bit of variability from company to company. Some of that is based on how advanced the company thinks their needs are, how experienced of a bookkeeper they really want. There's lots of variables that come into what you need to pay. But in general, you see that bookkeepers in my area make about somewhere between $40,000 and $55,000. Your mileage may vary. Now let's take a look at the controller. So the bookkeeper can prepare a rough draft of your financial statements. Your controller can prepare a clean version, and this should have all the other transactions that the bookkeeper may not be including. The controller also is able to analyze the financial statements, where you're doing well at, where you're not doing well at. They often will prepare budgets and projections. They review the bank recs that the bookkeeper can do. They often are responsible for reviewing some of the work of the bookkeepers and other staff members. Your bank rec and GL recs should be reviewed by someone other than who prepared them. This is a safeguard just to make sure things are accurate and clean. Controllers often work on process improvements, how to make the workflow better in the office, or maybe they're working on implementing new software for the company. They often will work on establishing internal controls. Internal controls, it's an accounting thing that basically helps to safeguard against people embezzling money from your company and then being able to hide the transactions that would prove it. Controllers help ensure that procedures are in compliance with various standards, rules, and regulations that need to be followed, whether it's generally accepted accounting principles or GAAP, or whether it's state and local regulations. When you look in the one ads, what you will often see is that controllers need to have a 2-year degree minimum, but 4-year degree preferred. Credentials can be very, very helpful, whether it's CPA, CMA, or some other credentials. They need to be able to understand financial systems, and they need to be usually pretty advanced in Excel or Google Sheets, some spreadsheet tool like that. Excel is most common. Having experience in your industry is very helpful. The focus for the controller is on reviewing the overall system, ensuring things are moving smoothly, accurately, timely. They put together budgets. They know how things flow well, so the budgets make sense. Just to remind you that the bookkeeper is more focused on the transactions, making sure that things are entered into the accounting software. The controller is looking at the system as a whole, just ensuring that everything's working as well as it can be. Again, when you go to the want ads, you can see what kind of price you have to pay for a controller. These are salary levels that I saw posted in my area. Again, there is variability based on how big the company is, how sophisticated it is, how much experience they need. You can see that the lows average about 83,000, the highs average about 113,000, but definitely that's a wide range there. Now let's look at the functions the CFO would be working on. They do the bank negotiations for you. They work to make sure there's a line of credit for your company. They make sure that you have term debts with good terms. They negotiate interest rates on your behalf, and they work with the covenants that the bank requires. They help you with strategy development. This is much bigger than accounting. This is for the company as a whole. They help with sales direction, manufacturing, geographic expansions, new lines of products and services. They also help with the process improvements. I mentioned earlier that the controller can be expected to work on process improvements, workflows, and such. The CFO will help guide the controller in the direction that the CFO thinks is appropriate. CFOs often help develop employee benefits packages, appropriate pay ranges for the different employee classes, work on vacation policies, PTO policies, health insurance, 401k options, other benefits. A big thing that CFOs also do is they communicate with outside parties about how your company is doing and what your company's needs are. At a minimum, they need a 4-year degree in accounting or finance. Having a CPA or an MBA is very helpful. They can work independently with the outside parties. They oversee all the financial and accounting related activities for the whole company. They need to have the ability to learn the industry quickly. Now, they don't necessarily need to have industry experience from the beginning, but they do need to be able to pick up quickly. A lot of the stuff that happens from different industries has some similarities to it, so a good CFO will not take long to get up to speed. Obviously, if they're going to be communicating with outside parties, they need to have strong communication skills. The focus for the CFO is not on the debits and credits of the accounting transactions. It is on the overall financial health of the company. It often means focusing on the future with lots of interactions with outside parties. And just like the other positions, I took a look at openings in my area, and you can see there, again, there's some variability. Some of it relates to the size of the company, experience, desired sophistication. The lows average around 93,000 and the highs at about 157,000. There's a lot of variability there. Now, when you look at those three positions, bookkeeper, controller, and CFO, side by side, here are some of the key numbers. You can see that the low positions for each of these, bookkeeper is 43,000, controller 83,000, CFO about 93,000. The high point, about 53,000 for bookkeeper, 113 for controller, CFO is at 157,000. So why I mention this specifically is that some smaller companies who cannot afford to hire multiple accounting people, they choose to hire the highest level that they think they need, and then have that person also do the functions of the lower level person. For instance, they may hire someone who's really a controller person, and maybe half of their time they are doing bookkeeping services. You can see at the midpoint, a controller might make $98,000. And for that $98,000, they're also doing functions that someone who normally earns $48,000 does. So you're paying a premium for the bookkeeping functions by having the controller do those functions. Some companies will hire a CFO and have them do all the levels of work that are below that. So it's not really a bargain. If you want to know what people are paying nowadays, I would suggest going to Indeed.com, PayScale, ZipRecruiter, Monster, and especially if it's for an accounting-related function, check out Robert Half. For small businesses, having a bookkeeper on staff should take care of most of your daily needs. But for the more complicated matters, you should consider getting the right tool for the right job. If you can't afford or don't want to pay for a full-time controller or CFO, there are a lot of people who will do fractional work, part-time work. As you grow, perhaps you hire additional bookkeepers and various lower-level staff members, or hire a higher-level position to do some of those lower-level functions. But just know that you're going to pay a premium for those lower-level functions that the higher-paid person is doing. You just need to be aware. What's right for your company may look a little different than what's right for some other companies. So some key takeaways. Different functions are better aligned with different positions. Different skill sets have a different price that are associated with them. And you don't always need to hire a full-time person for some of the advanced functions. Consider part-time or fractional CFOs or controllers if that's all you need. Thank you and have a good day.